Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I'm going to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone for teaching us his truth. Salutations to the sincere Akim and Akwat that may listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Okwai. I'm back in here with another quick lesson. And for today's lesson, it's going to be a little bit of history. And I'm going to be going into the map of Africa, 1747, and the Kingdom of Judah, right? So I'm going through a book here known as, it's called the Negro Question Part 2, right? And I was just combing through it, and I thought I would show this. I thought this would make an edifying lesson, right? So without further ado, let's jump right in. So here is a map I found of Africa, right? So what I wanted to get specifically is something very, very interesting along the west coast of Africa, considering the fact that we have a lot of our people still dwelling in that part of the land today, right? So so let's click on this one. Okay, that's a good one. So if you look here closely, just zoom in. Right here it says Kingdom of Judah or Wida, right? So so what I want to read here is a quick excerpt from this book, and it says the following. So this is page 4 of Kingdom of Judah, and it says of the Negro question, Salakia. So it says, when European powers carved up Africa, it was custom for the European kings in those days to send out a cartographer to outline and pinpoint his holdings, right? So just for edification, a cartographer is someone who actually designs and makes maps, right? So there was a cartographer in the 1747 who went by the name of Emmanuel Bowen. This man held the title of royal cartographer for 2 European kings, King George II of England and King Louis XV of France. This was unusual about the map of that Emmanuel Bowen brought back to these 2 kings is that in the center of the map, Bowen shows the true name of the slave coast was none other than the Kingdom of Judah. Judah was known by 4 different names at the time: Judah, Wida, Quida, or Ibir. It says the following: what does this mean to those of us who have been in hot pursuit of truth? It means that we have proof of the royal map maker himself that Judah was indeed listed among the inhabitants of Africa, right? And this is something that our people, after the destruction of Jerusalem, which I'm going to get that in a second, a lot of our people fled into the interiors of Africa, and they were dwelling there for a period of time, right? Let's get a precept. Okay, this is I'm going to start off with Luke chapter 12 verse 2, and it reads, and Yahushua said, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known. Therefore whatsoever ye have spoken in darkness shall be heard in the light, and that ye have spoken in closets, and proclaimed upon the housetops, right? So, this information is coming out, and people are understanding the fact that, who the real Israelites are and where they actually made their settlements, right? Okay, so back here on page 5, it says, of even greater interest is the fact that the map was not disputed by the two kings. You would do well and take heed to the fact that the British laid claim to the so-called slave coast, that its inhabitants were sold into British colonies, and one being North America. How authentic is this map? So this is an excerpt from Northwestern University, Authentic Map of West Africa. The University of Northwestern Illinois has this map in their inventory and lists it as an authentic map of Western Africa in 1747 by Emmanuel Bowen. Even to this day, there is a fort called Fort of Ajuda. If you pull up the information online at Northwestern University, this is what you'll see. Northwestern University Library Maps of Africa, a new and accurate map of Negro land. So that's what it was called back then. Right? Publication, London, subject West Africa, identification, Northwestern University Library. So I just want to keep going just a little bit more. Okay, here it says, on page 67 of this publication are the notes of white slavers recalling the inventory of human beings on a cargo ship. Let's see what he writes. He writes that 16 slave trading ships arrived from the Senegal region. 6 ships came from Judah, landed in the mouth of Mississippi, and in 1731, one ship from Judah landed 664 slaves in the mouth of Mississippi. On page 69, it states that the Company of India had strong trading posts at Judah. So when it says at Judah, it says in brackets, Gulf of Benin. So this is where a lot of our people are actually dwelling. We're dwelling right near the coast, right? And that lines up perfectly with this particular prophecy. I don't know if I have this on the screen. Okay, this is Deuteronomy 28, verse 68. And it reads, and the Lord Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Right? So, there after our people left Egypt, there was no record of them going back. And secondly, and I heard Apostle Gabar actually bring this out to the fact that there is no need to go into Egypt with ships, right? Because during the time of Joseph, if I'm not mistaken, to one of those chapters in Genesis, I think it was 49, no, it was 50 at Salakia, there was a famine, right? And there was a time where Joseph got gotten a dream from the Pharaoh, and he had to interpret a dream, right? And then there was a period of time where there was supposed to be a few years of famine and a few years of a good harvest. And essentially, long story short, he had to stock up. And Jacob and Joseph's brothers, Reuben and Judah and so on and so forth, they had to go down to Egypt to actually get food, and then he was reunited with his brothers. Long story short, essentially the point I'm trying to make is that you don't have to use ships to get into Egypt from the land of Canaan, which is present day, Israel today, right? So this is where our people went into Egypt, and that Egypt is a a spiritual Egypt, right? Like it says in Revelation 11, verse 8, that our dead bodies shall lie in the great city, which is spiritually Sodom and Egypt, to roughly paraphrase, right? Because in this part of the world, where we were taken on this side of the world, we would have no understanding and no idea of who we were as a people, right? um, so, okay, so moving on. Okay, it says here on page 7, the Portuguese were taking upper hand of Judah. Northwestern University, Boston University, and Louisiana State University have in its possession documents calling the slave coast of Africa Judah. If you won't believe me, surely you will believe academia. Aren't they supposed to be the caretakers of the truth? Uh, you also have a town named Ajuda, and if any brothers want to look this up, the town is spelled Ajuda. That was in existence before Portuguese set foot on West African soil. It says the Kingdom of Judah slave coast was controlled by the British, and all of these black Jews came pouring into the British colonies, right? And there's a book called Babylon the Timbuktu, when it says that after the persecution of the Romans, a lot of the black Jews, they fled into the interiors. About approximately 1 million of them fled into the interiors of Africa. We settled there, and we dwelt there, Salakia. That's the point I was trying to make. Let's get a precept. Okay, this is Luke chapter 21. I'll start at verse 21. And Yahushua said, let them which are in Judea flee into the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these shall be the days of vengeance, and all things, Slakia, which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For there shall be a great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. Right? So this is going into the time where the Romans had besieged Jerusalem, and a lot of the Israelites had scattered and then fled. Some of them fled into the interiors. A bulk of them fled into the interiors of Africa. Some also fled into the interiors of Europe, right? Because remember that the Roman Empire, Slovakia, forgive me. They also had vassal states, so they also had control as territories such as the Gauls and so on and so forth, which is present-day France, and a lot of Israelites fled there, right, and actually began to rule there, and that's where you get the history of the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, the medieval times, right? But considering, for the sake of this lesson, it was specifically focused on the Israelites that fled into the interiors of Africa, and they dwelt along the west coast. So countries such as Benin and Senegal and Liberia, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Ghana, and a lot of these countries actually had lots of they held on to a lot of Israelite customs, right? For example, the Ashanti were very, very well known for example, circumcising their sons. I think as well they also practiced the separation of women, like having women in a separate room when they're on their menstrual cycles. So they kept a lot of the Israelite customs, right? Lord's will, as time progresses, I can do more lessons on that because there were actually examples of a lot of these West African tribes, known as like the Ashanti, for example. They held on to a lot of the Israelite customs, right? Let me see if there's any more here. The kingdom of Judah was controlled by the British, and all of these black Jews came pouring into the British colonies. The question that arises from the research is how that these black Jews get to West African. Oh, Salakia, hold on. Get to West Africa, and when did they begin to arrive? Right, so okay, so then it goes on to the next chapter. That's pretty much it. I kind of wanted to cover on that. So another point I also wanted to make quickly, I thought this was very interesting, I wanted to bring out as well. I wanted to bring out a little bit of I found this article online about the Berlin Conference, right? Just bear with me 1 second, brothers. Okay, so this is the Berlin Conference. So essentially, the Berlin Conference was a conference that was held, and eventually, a lot of these quote unquote European nations. Eventually, at this time, this is when we lost a lot of our power, and this is when the so-called white people started taking over, right? And they started carving up different portions of Africa, right? So here quickly it says in 1884 the leaders of 14 European countries in the United States came together to discuss the control of Africa's resources, known as the Berlin Conference. They sought to discuss the partitioning of Africa, establishing rules to amicably divide resources among the Western countries at the expense of the African people. Of these 14 nations at the Berlin Conference, we have France, West Germany, Great Britain, Portugal, some of the major players. Notably missing were any representatives of Africa. One of the tasks of this conference was for each European country to have European country that claimed possession over part of Africa to bring quote unquote civilization as a form of Christianity as well as trade, right? So I wanted to bring this out quickly because this is something that's still continuing to plague our people in these parts of the land today, right? So you have Esau coming in and telling the Israelites there that, okay, we're going to come in to essentially civilize them, but they don't actually want to do that. What they actually wanted was the rich resources that existed in these lands, right? And this is not just for the sake of this lesson, I just want to say this, that I'm only strictly focusing on Israelites and that dwell in Africa at the moment, but Esau has done this to a lot of the northern kingdom tribes and where they dwell today as well, right? So let me just get this quick precept. Okay, this is Sirach chapter 19, verse 26, and it reads, "There is a wicked man that hangeth down his head sadly, but inwardly he is full of deceit, casting down his countenance, making as if he heard not. Where he is not known, he will do thee a mischief before thou be aware," right? So, coming in the guise of quote unquote Christianity was just a way for him to, come and devise, essentially he's coming to devise mischief, right? Before thou be aware. Verse 28, if for want of power he be hindered from sinning, when he findeth the opportunity, he will do evil, right? So this is the evil that Esau and these so-called leaders had come with. They're coming in the guise of, okay, we need to civilize these people, and they're using the cloak of quote-unquote Christianity to actually do so, right? So one of those leaders was named King Leopold II of Belgium. And one of the reasons they wanted to come into the interiors of parts of Western Africa, but a bit of the continent as well, because it's very, very rich in different natural resources, and rubber was one of the things that they extracted. Even to this day, you have, for example, the gas company known as Shell. So Shell has extracted lots of oil and resources from countries, for example, such as Nigeria. There's a part, there is a a location in Nigeria known as the Ogoni land, and this is where they extracted lots and lots of the resources and the oil from Nigeria. They paid off the military. This is the very same Shell company I'm speaking of, right? They paid off the military, the Nigerian military, to combat against protesters, because with all of the drawback and the filth, they began to pollute a lot of the streams and rivers that you Israelites were actually using at that time, and still their pollution is still there, remaining to this day, right? So you still have lots of examples of Esau coming into these nations, carving them up, and using their companies to essentially put hell upon you, right? Put hell upon you, Israelites, right? Let's get one more. Okay, Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 33, and it reads, the fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up. Thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always, right? So a lot of these nations where we dwell today, we don't have the control over the resources in these particular lands. So for example, you can look this up. It's called Shell. You can look up the story with Shell and Nigeria. There's other examples in different parts of the other tribes. For example, Venezuela has also rich reserves of oil as well. Parts of the Latin tribes, they have very rich resources when it comes to bananas. There was another company known as the United Fruit Company. I believe it was in Guatemala or Nicaragua, one of those countries. But a lot of you Israelites are there presently at this day, right? And what Esau has done is come in, and when the people actually needing to actually want to use the land, the companies have more control over the land, so you Israelites can't even benefit from the very land that you live on, right? But this ultimately is a punishment, pursuant to Amos chapter 3 verse 2, of all the families of the earth, we were punished for our iniquities, right? And this is one of the curses that fell upon us as a people and as a nation. So anyways, hopefully this lesson was edifying. I could go on a little bit more, but I don't want to make it too long. But as always, I pray and hope that these lessons are edifying. I jotted down a couple of key points. You can do some more independent research for yourselves. And as always, I'd like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone for teaching us His truth. Until next time, I say Shalom.